Hello and welcome to Just Draw, Just Paint Part 4. This week we are doing the exact same thing as we did last week. We are taking one of the thumbnails we developed early last week and we're now taking it into a final drawing. And we're going to stick with our methods here, doing a first generation drawing straight over the silhouette. And we're going to start that process by cleaning up the silhouette as you see me doing here. So this is now part of a series. I think I'm going to finish all three thumbnails. So this week we'll do the second one. Next week we'll do the third one. And after that, we'll do something new and fresh. So I've been really grateful for some of the comments you guys are leaving about the process, about finding value as beginners in art, on how to approach art, how to think about these things. It's really good that you guys are taking something away from these demos. And I'm not just blindly drawing and, you know, that you guys aren't getting anything out of it. Like, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch these demos, listen to me, and all of that jazz. So with this particular drawing this week, I actually discovered that it was a little bit more challenging to find the shapes within the silhouette because it is a much more unusual silhouette without a whole lot of obvious anatomy. And so it took me a while to find the forms. And I want to point that out here as a note because sometimes we get into design and it's easy. We can see what should be there and the design doesn't challenge us that much. Whereas sometimes we come up with a design that's a little bit more challenging. We have to think of the perspective. We have to make sure that the overlap is clear, that there's weighting that's going on. Like, there's so many factors that we think about in terms of fundamentals when we're looking at our artwork that we are not sure about until we get stuck in. And then we realize, hold on, this is a little bit more difficult than the previous one, or maybe it's a little bit easier. Either way, we have to be aware that no two drawings are the same. Some will be more difficult inherently than others, and this can happen across the board. And this is what happens, by the way, when you're designing, right? When we're designing, we're trying to find something, right? We're trying to come up with something that hasn't existed before. And this is the genius of the human mind, right? This is the beauty of what we're capable of as artists, is seeing things that not even a computer can think of, right? You can synthesize a million AI arts, but it will never think the way that you do. It will never make the choices that you're making. And ultimately, that's what the value is that you provide as an independent artist, is your view of the world. So in this case here, I'm not 100% sure if what I'm starting to establish here is going to work. In fact, that you'll see a little bit later on. I changed my mind on a bunch of ideas, like I don't like the big lens head. In fact, I changed it to a much smaller, almost like a helmet erupting out of the main torso type head. And the reason I'm not fixated on that problem right now is because I try to work broadly first. I try to establish as much information into the drawing as early as possible so that I have a direction. I can say, well, I actually appreciate the way the arms are coming down here. I like what's happening in the front. I like what's happening in the thigh. All of those decisions that I'm making at this stage allows me to take this further because I have the confidence of it's already on the page. Right? If I didn't do that and I fixated on one area and I was trying to get that one ear or those lips just perfect, I wouldn't be thinking of the whole drawing. And in this way, you'll often see a lot of professional artists. We like to jump around our drawing and work in different places. That's not to say all artists do this, but I would say a majority of us do this. And it's because of that reason. It's like we're essentially problem solving the entire time as we're developing something. Because remember, what you see in front of you hasn't existed until this moment. We've completely synthesized the shape of this, and now we're synthesizing the interior of this shape. So we're designing as we go. And this is a slightly more advanced skill. It obviously requires that we have more visual library. In other words, we have been working on these kind of designs for long enough to know sort of how they should look. And so we're able to summon that knowledge and create freely as we're drawing. And it's a very freeing process, this one. You'll even see that I'm working on some sort of details here on the leg that ultimately I abandoned. And that's okay, right? I'm trying to unify everything at some point. Now, this might not be the exact point that we want to do it, right? But I'm consciously thinking of how am I unifying this design's shape, its proportions, its weighting, like all of those things need to be solved. But for me personally, I like to get as much information down as possible, as early as possible, and then tweak the rest into position, right? It's much easier to fix something when it's already established than it is to try and fix it on the go and hope for the best as you work through the whole thing. So yeah, very much similar. As you can see, one of the things I thought about doing here that was quite interesting is like, what if the shoulder looked a little bit like some kind of fender on top of a tire, right? I really like the idea that there's this weird rubber part of the robot, right? The material is a little bit different. And it almost looks like it's a recycled futuristic Akira motorbike type tire, something that's kind of interesting. And I also like the shape division, right? I like that it goes from one thing into the shoulder becomes another big thigh, and the thigh becomes the knee, eventually becomes the leg, right? So when I'm drawing robots, I'm often thinking of real world anatomy, especially since the brief of last week was to think more organically. And here you can see I'm starting to change that torso because I want to establish some more interesting dynamic three-dimensional shapes, and also introduce a head a little bit more like a robot or a character than what we had before, which was too robotic, right? Because remember, the brief is to have some kind of animalistic type thing going on here. And I don't know if I hit that as hard this week with the brief. Maybe I sort of semi-abandoned the brief as we're just drawing, just painting, and trying to remove the stress out of the brief itself. The brief is just a guide, right? It's a nice way to get started with something like this. We're just keeping it loose. But in this way, I'm able to establish something in there that's kind of cool, right? Something that's going to work. And for me, that's more important with this particular exercise. I'm not doing this for a client. I'm not trying to please anybody. We're just drawing and having fun and just trying to see what comes out of it, right? And that, to me, is the purest type of drawing. Like, we often, even as professionals, we forget that we got into art to make awesomeness, right? And so for me today, it's just about making awesomeness, right? Like, how do I make shapes I like? How do I draw stuff I think is cool and get that down on a page and start to work that up? So that's a little bit about this particular design this week. You'll see that I'm trying to look for various forms, nothing too dramatically different from last week. And I hope that's okay with you guys. It's a bit of a series. I think next week will be the last one of these. So we'll move on to something fresh. If you guys have some ideas or you'd like to see me do something, feel free to drop it in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see, and maybe I'll start to do some of the stuff that you guys want to see. I know that about 2 weeks ago, I released a landscape video that you guys were really into. There was a lot of positive response on that one. The problem with those kind of demos is that they do take a little bit longer because I have to take them to a finish. So I end up spending a lot more hours on that kind of thing rather than just drawing, right? Sometimes drawing like this quite freely is very quick and easy for me to put together. Whereas those bigger demos, I don't mind doing them. I might do like one a month, I think, in future because you guys like it so much. But I don't know if I can commit to more than that at the moment while I'm still mentoring everybody and trying to help everybody get better at their art, right? That's my primary focus, right? I like my students, my mentees, they always come first, right? Always, always, always. Because remember, you guys are trying to break into the entertainment industry, right? It's just no small feat, right? It needs a lot of help. So I have to be there all the time to make sure that you're getting better. So these demos are kind of like a nice exercise for me to give back to you guys as well, because when I was starting out, right, like back in the early 2000s, there was nothing like this, very little information like this out there. And so, I'm always looking for ways to give back. And this is sort of a little bit of a way for me to give back to the community and just say thank you, for all of you guys out there who, were ahead of me in this particular field, and you managed to find the time to help me and give me feedback and advice. The people I met at conventions who took the time to look at my portfolio, right? All of that kind of stuff, I hope you guys experience as well. And I'd like to be that person for you as well. That's part of the reason I started my school, is because I wanted to help the world, right? Get better at fundamentals in order to improve their craft and take it a bit forward, right? So enough of that. If you guys aren't aware, every week I'm constantly telling you guys about the newsletter we have at our school. It is completely free. And the reason I keep mentioning it is because one half of getting good and breaking into this industry is skill, no doubt, right? You got to be a good artist to get the jobs that you want, right? And no one's going to hire you unless you have that, of course, right? That's all the kind of stuff we train for. But there's also an aspect of the industry which is not talked about, which is the psychology of it, right? Of being an artist, of breaking in, of what it takes. The psychology of, being a professional artist is just not talked about. And it's so weird to me. So I started a free newsletter. You guys are more than welcome to pop over to the school, 101artschool.com, and sign up to the free newsletter. It's a pop-up that comes up the moment you visit the website, and you can just sign up for it there. It's completely free. You can unsubscribe at any time. And the whole purpose of that newsletter is to just talk about the mentality and the tools, the psychological tools that you can implement in order to take your art to the next level and to get to a professional level. So give it a shot if that's really what you're here for. If you guys are just hobbyists and you just want to draw all day or something like that, that's totally fine too. I've also heard from a number of you that you are just different types of creatives, people who like to establish their own art for their own like book titles or comic books and things like that. That's totally fine. But if you're interested in more of the concept art or illustration type industry type stuff that I'm a bit more familiar with, then I think the newsletter would be really useful for you. You should definitely check it out. And also give me feedback on it. I've also received a lot of feedback from people who are newsletter subscribers. And this year, I was lucky enough to drop in some really cool stuff in there, like free content, special deals for Black Friday, stuff that I've never done before, which was a lot of fun. I'm in a privileged enough position to start offering that kind of stuff. And I think it's another great reason, right, to be on that list. So yeah, no, I'm trying not to be a self-promotion slut here. I'm just honestly telling you guys stuff that I think will really help you. There's no other reason I'm really doing the newsletter other than to provide information to the greater industry, because it blows my mind that a lot of this information, a lot of what's should be talked about isn't being talked about. And so my kind of goal with transforming things and making it a better environment for all of us is just being a part of the solution, right? I think that's pretty important. Cool. So here I'm just adjusting the far side. You saw that I started with a different color. I often do that with my designs just to keep my head separate from what I'm trying to do. And this far side of the robot ends up being quite an issue because remember, as perspective bends away from you, right, foreshortening becomes more expanded. So we see more of the side of something versus our near side perspective of the leg. So I have to turn those forms a little bit, right? And I have to adjust things. I have to look at my center line and figure out how far is the leg from that center line on one side. And then I have to look at the floor and measure up and figure out where it should be on the other side. So you're going to quickly see me here go from what is an almost finished drawing here to the actual finished drawing, right? And I'm going to stop at some point here where we're almost at the end of the initial lay-in process. And all that's left is to just refine this to a finish. So just putting in a last couple details here, and then you'll see that I'm going to adjust those legs a little bit and refine the whole drawing into a finish. And I think next week I'll record more of that, but this week I decided to not waste a lot of video time and of course your time watching these demos. But if you're interested in the refinement process like I am here, then watch last week's video for sure, and then next week I'll do a little bit more of it as well. But for this one here, just a few adjustments of placement and details, and we'll call it a day. So hope you guys enjoyed this demo. Hope the information was useful. I hope to see you in the next one. And thank you so much for taking the time to like and subscribe into this demos into my YouTube channel. It really helps us grow, helps me make more of these videos, right? A lot more incentive for me to make this stuff so that you guys can benefit from it. So thank you so much. As for the feedback you guys have been giving me, thank you so much. I appreciate all of it. I take it all to heart. And that's it for me. Enjoy the last few seconds here where I take this to a finish, where I'm adjusting perspective. And then finally, you'll see the ultimate drawing here. All right. I'll see you next week, and I hope you guys have an amazing end of year. The 101 Art School is officially closed, and we will be open again in January. So we'll check you then, and have a great holiday.